See this crowd?
Chaos on the streets of Manila. Outrage at allegations of widespread corruption in flood control projects turned violent on Sunday. Masked protesters threw rocks and glass bottles at police and set a trailer truck on fire to break through the barrier. More confrontations happened near the presidential palace before police fired tear gas and a water cannon.
Streets packed, drums pounding, cops on edge. Looks like Paris, London, maybe California, right? Wrong. This is Manila. These people aren't protesting gas prices. It's the flood control. Because behind those floods is a billion-dollar corruption scheme that will blow your mind. To understand the scandal, we first have to understand the battlefield. The Philippines is not simply an island nation. It is more than 7,000 islands stretched across the Pacific typhoon belt, like a chain of targets. Rain here is not a passing inconvenience. It is a season, a rhythm, a certainty. Each year, monsoon downpours turn highways into rivers and basements into aquariums. Whole neighborhoods live with the quiet dread that the next storm could be the one that takes everything. Successive governments promise salvation, drainage canals to redirect torrents, concrete flood walls to hold back swollen rivers, and pumping stations strong enough to lift entire districts above the rising tide. Between 2016 and 2024, the national budget for flood control swelled beyond 700 billion pesos, more money than the country spends on health or education. To the public, those numbers sounded like progress. To a different set of eyes, they look like opportunity. Where storms meet money, temptation follows like a shadow. Budgets of this size do not merely invite corruption, they practically guarantee it. Paper becomes more powerful than sandbags, and contracts more valuable than concrete. Somewhere between government offices and construction sites, a door opened. Through it stepped contractors, middlemen, and politicians, who saw in the flood not a threat, but a payday. The first clues arrived in 2023 when the Commission on Audit released a dense technical report. Hidden among the bureaucratic language was a revelation that cut like lightning through the dry text. Dozens of flood control projects had been paid for in full, yet remained unfinished, defective, or missing altogether. Inspectors visited sites listed as 100% complete, only to find empty lots, drainage pipes that led nowhere, or trenches left to fill with rain. A 150 million peso river wall in Bulacan existed mostly on paper. A Mindanao drainage system, awarded to a company barely a year old and linked to a congressman's cousin, collected its entire budget and disappeared without breaking ground. These were not isolated mistakes. They were patterns, ghost projects, repeating across provinces and budgets while storms gathered offshore. The machinery of theft operated with the precision of an assembly line. Large drainage networks were sliced into dozens of small contracts, each conveniently below the threshold that would require competitive bidding. Front companies, often registered under relatives or employees, created the illusion of competition while ensuring that the same insiders always won. Contractors collected hefty advance payments before a single shovel broke soil. When construction finally began, mid-project change orders tripled costs with the stroke of a pen. Every tactic had a single purpose: to turn life-saving infrastructure into a private cash machine. By the time the rainy season arrived, the money was gone, and the promised protections were nothing more than engineering sketches gathering dust. Numbers on a balance sheet cannot convey the human cost. To see it, you have to stand where the floodwater rises. In the riverside city of Marikina, residents placed their faith in a brand new pumping station. When Typhoon Carding struck in 2022, the station stood silent and entire neighborhoods disappeared beneath waist-deep water. In Cagayan de Oro, students paddled to school on improvised rafts because drainage canals clogged within a year of their supposed completion. Each outbreak of leptospirosis, each spike in dengue fever, each ruined harvest traces back to a budget line where money should have built protection and instead purchased silence. For families scrubbing mud from living rooms, corruption is not an abstract crime. It is the smell of stagnant water and the fear that the next storm will bring disease before relief. The suffering forced secrets out of the offices where they were born. Journalists from Rappler and the Philippine Center for Investigative Journalism began connecting scattered fragments of evidence. They noticed the same contractors winning flood projects across multiple provinces, despite records of unfinished work. Procurement officers spoke in whispers of late-night calls demanding signatures. One whistleblower described the pressure with brutal clarity, refused to approve a release and risk a transfer to a remote province. Or something worse. Civil society groups seized on the revelations. They organized rallies outside the Department of Public Works and Highways, chanting, "Hindi ulan ang kalaban, kundi magnanakaw." The enemy is not the rain, it is the thieves. What began as scattered protests swelled into a nationwide outcry. By early 2024, the controversy had climbed the marble stairs of the Philippine Senate. Televised hearings turned technical audits into primetime drama. Opposition lawmakers waved commission on audit documents like banners, their voices echoing across the chamber. Names of sitting governors and congressmen surfaced alongside figures showing billions of pesos in unexplained disbursements. One senator called flood control the new pork barrel, a phrase heavy with memories of the notorious development fund scandal of the previous decade. Another described the system as a cash river flowing straight into private pockets. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., facing mounting pressure, ordered a nationwide audit of every ongoing flood project. But many of those implicated were political allies, raising doubts about whether the investigation would be a dam or merely another leak. The scandal did not stop at the nation's borders. The Philippines sits on the front line of the global climate crisis, and the world knows it. International donors, the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, Japan's JICI, have poured billions of dollars into climate resilience loans and grants, much of it aimed at flood mitigation. Every peso lost to fraud is not merely a local failure. It is a setback for global climate finance. Each stolen dollar is a levy left unfinished, a village left exposed. One development banker put it bluntly: every peso lost here is a life left unprotected when the next Haiyan strikes. By late 2024, Manila's Mendiola Bridge had become a river of protest. Market vendors, tricycle drivers, students, and mothers who had lost children to storm surges gathered beneath banners demanding, "Stop the flood of corruption." Their message was brutally simple. They were drowning not because of the rain, but because someone had stolen the lifeboats. Unlike past political rallies, these gatherings cut across party lines. The victims were not career activists, but ordinary citizens, families who had paid the price of ghost projects in soaked mattresses and ruined harvests. Their persistence forced the government to keep the investigation alive long after politicians hoped it would fade from the headlines. Experts propose solutions that sound almost simple compared to the complexity of the theft. Transparent procurement portals, where every contract is trackable in real time. Independent engineering audits before any payment is released. Community monitoring programs that train residents to photograph and geotag construction progress. Some municipalities are even experimenting with blockchain tracking of materials and payments, proof that technology can outpace old habits if the political will exists. Yet each proposal collides with the same question that has haunted every Philippine corruption scandal. Who will guard the guardians? Laws can be written, software can be installed, but without accountability, the flood of money will continue to find cracks. As this story is told, forecasters warn of another La Niña season. Dark clouds gather over the Pacific. Engineers race to finish levees, whose budgets may already be bled dry. Families stockpile candles and plastic tarps, unsure whether the new walls will hold or crumble like the promises that funded them. Rain will come, that much is certain. The only unknown is whether the money meant to keep it at bay will finally stay where it belongs or disappear once more into the pockets of the powerful. Corruption in flood control is not merely theft. It is a betrayal of the most basic social contract, that government will protect its citizens from forces they cannot control. Nature sends the rain. Only people decide whether a flood becomes a disaster. Until the thieves are stopped, every storm is a payday, and every drop of rain carries the weight of a stolen future.